podcast. We're trying to be very serious here because we're with a serious topic.
We're acting natural.
So this is natural. Welcome back to our podcast. No more secrets. As always, I'm your aunt.
I'm being natural. And I'm your niece, Katie.
And you guys know who I am, so I'm not redoing that whole introduction thing.
No, you get the bit.
Yeah, we were just having a little bit of fun. Not that we ever do that, but we are welcoming back our guest. Katie, take it from here.
So if you guys want to welcome Jeff, if you want to say hello, Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
If you guys watched our last episode, he was on previously, and this is kind of a continuation from when we were talking last week. So he's actually a local farmer. If you didn't hear that episode, he's a local farmer here in Libertyville, and he wanted to talk to us a little bit about farm life and just the changes in the environment and kind of his like general effects on himself and everything. So we figured we'd have him back on because one, our cameras died the last time.
Because we're really high tech here.
Yeah, we're really professional.
We actually are. I mean, we have great equipment. We just didn't have a fan.
Yeah, we need our biggest fan.
I mean, we have you fans, but not.
Yes. Yeah. So we're doing a part 2, and so we're all in different clothes, as you can tell.
Yeah, even Jeff.
Yeah, some of them.
Yeah, some of them. It's funny.
Same socks, maybe. I don't know.
Same underwear.
Yeah.
Don't want to waste those.
Well, so I guess I want to back up, and it doesn't hurt to review, and you guys feel free to back up to the next episode if you didn't catch it. So part 1 of this climate change episode. But we ended talking really about the brain. And we were talking about your depressive episodes and your anxiety, how your anxiety triggered the depression. The depression led to you just wanting to go to bed for a couple of days. You would pull out of it on your own, but it would drive you crazy why it happened in the first place, how you pulled out of it, and that's when you gave that Einstein quote. Oh. And if you want to go back over that about the brain, and the human brain can't understand the human brain. Yeah,
any system that is complicated enough can't be understood by the same system. So it's sort of like saying your brain can't fully understand itself, and it's very true.
And so that's frustrating to you, though, right? Because you don't understand why you sink into depression necessarily, or how you can control it going forward. It often seems really
random, and it's really frustrating not being able to identify something concretely that is a pattern that seems to identify what may have caused it or triggered it or whatever. But I think that's one of the reasons I am so analytical with a lot of things, and I overthink some things too, because I'm always trying to figure out cause and reaction, and or cause and effect, and essentially the same thing. But
do you beat yourself up when you come out of a depressive episode, like, oh, I'm such a loser, why did I do that? Or
I do, to an extent, especially because I feel very unproductive, and productivity is sort of a really highly valued virtue when you're farming, and so if I spend a day off or in bed or on the couch or something, then I sometimes it drives me to feel even worse too, unless I catch myself and I'm like, I need the rest, and it's justified. But sometimes I get so far behind that it gets really frustrating and tough to recover from that too, because then you're racing around frantically afterwards trying to play catch up sometimes.
Trying to play catch up, yeah. Now, do you still swing from lows to highs, or do you just slowly pull out and kind of go back to what's normal for you?
More recently, it's been more of just dipping down and going back to normal. I don't seem to swing past anymore pendulously. It seems to be sort of stabilized, which was one of the things I was sort of aiming for from the beginning with it when I was medicated too, was just to smooth the curve. I don't care if I go high as long as I don't go so low anymore.
Got it, yeah.
But it was difficult to try and figure out what was going on, and usually come up empty-handed, because I think it is such a complex issue that it escapes me.
Well, yeah, I think for everyone, it's one of those diseases that's so insidious. You think that people they get over their depression, they get medicated, whatever, and then you hear that they've killed themselves, and you're like, what? It just can't. It comes right. It sneaks up when you least expect it, like a lot of diseases do. So.
I mean, something that you said kind of resonated with me, because the times that I've had depression, or because it's more situational for myself anyway, it's not only just like the feelings of like while you're going through it, but it's like I feel kind of mad at myself that I just it's like I blame myself for
you feel like you let yourself
the
down
problems
because
that are
you
going on in
allowed
my
it to
head.
happen. But
and it's like it's the brain thing. Like you can't understand every area of the brain. Like, why is my brain not working today? Or like, why isn't it emotionally secure today? Or something, you know, like it's just, it doesn't make sense, but it just is.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's one of the things I've had to sort of accept too, is that like you can have feelings and you can not understand them, and it's okay to not understand them. Doesn't make them unjustified. It just means that you don't understand why.
And perhaps other people don't either. So partners, friends, parents, whatever. You know, I'm constantly telling my partner that feelings aren't right or wrong. They just are.
Yeah.
So to tell somebody you're wrong to feel that way, it's like, but I do feel that way. You know, maybe I can work on myself to not feel that way in the future, but I'm not wrong. It is a true feeling. There's no right or wrong with it. You know, so that's a main key, I think, in relating to other people when you have depressive or anxiety or depressive episodes, whatever. You know, so yeah.
I feel like that's one thing that I have to explain quite a lot too, is like, I don't know why it's so severe, this feeling, and it's not justified, but I do feel this way, and I'm just experiencing it. And so just sort of stand by if you could, and don't take anything too personally, which I also usually shut down a bit when I'm depressed, just so I don't lash out or
You mentioned that.
overreact or something.
Do you ever, I mean, are you saying that you communicate with like your wife, your fiance like that? You say like, hey, I'm just going through a episode, or do you feel like it's hard to talk about it?
Yeah, it can be very difficult, especially in the moment, to express yourself or to break through and admit to, like, I'm just feeling really horrible and I'm not being a good person right now and I'm not being good to you, and it's not because I'm angry, it's because I'm angry with myself mostly, that I feel this way and I can't understand or explain it.
That's really impressive that you're able to verbalize that, because I feel like I mean a lot of people just shut down, you know.
Oh, I do that too. Yeah. Believe me, that's part of it.
It's a to and fro, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a zigzag. Maybe you're going up, but you're going a little down, and then a little more up, and you know. But it's never perfect, right?
Yeah, and it's not even a line graph either. I feel like there's 4 dimensions to it too. You're like feeling this way in that aspect, and that way in another, and then all of a sudden something starts going right in your life, and you're like, oh, but I can't feel good because now this is, it's just pulling you in a whole bunch of different ways too.
I like that.
Sometimes you'll get better overall, and that just means you're nebulously more concentrated in a good area, but then you can have part of you sink out and get into a funk in terms of negative thought loops, or in terms of anxiety over a certain topic, and it does feel like I'm getting pulled in too many directions when I get a depressive episode too.
Interesting. Yeah, not just a to and fro.
Yeah.
Or a zigzag.
Do you notice like any triggers that bring it about, or is it just kind of random whenever?
Yeah. Big triggers I've noticed are, especially in correlation with my health, or when
She always does this to me, so I'm so glad.
Every time she starts talking. I'm going over here.
We're talking about serious things here.
Okay. Go on.
But the triggers seem to be really unhealthy habits, either staying up way too late, or missing sleep, or eating really bad stuff for more than one day straight, and sometimes even now, getting older, well, just one day, or surrounding myself with negative stuff. Like if I get onto, I'm a big conspiracy theorist guy. I'll admit that. I love opening my mind up and being like, what if? And so I'll go down these rabbit holes on the internet, and that's a dangerous place to go.
Yeah.
It seems like rabbits are friendly. Going down their hole wouldn't be all that bad, but oh my God, sometimes it's just terrifying.
How do you live in here?
Yeah.
It's dark down there without the sun.
Yeah. And so, it gets overwhelming sometimes once you get triggered by something, and it's easy for me to get triggered because I'm a passionate person, and I tend to get emotional, and I also feel like my emotional intelligence isn't as developed as a lot of people I know, and so sometimes I don't handle things well, and I try to be empathetic. That's one thing that I have going for me, is that I can imagine myself in other people's shoes, and so that's, I think, one of the parts that keeps me being a pretty good person even when I am in a depressive episode.
Got
is
it,
being like,
yeah.
oh man, I can see that from this other person's perspective I'm not acting nice, even though in the moment I'm like, I don't want to act nice. I don't care. I don't feel good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to pull myself back in perspective and be able to sort of transplant my perspective to other people, or even just externally, to look at myself and be like, that's maybe not the best thing to do right now, or sit up straight, or breathe deeper. Or
Well, you mentioned even breathing exercises have really...
those have been helping me a lot, yeah. The breathing exercises, yeah.
Natural.
Should we do it again?
Act natural.
He does it the best.
I just get as uncomfortable as I can by having good posture.
I try to make my neck as long as possible.
Because that's reasonable to like drive a car that way and do your job that way.
You guys don't do that? You guys sound like the crazy ones, honestly. Can I say?
Oh gosh. So one of the main things I know that you have shared triggers you is the deterioration of the planet, the change in weather, the change in the soil, the change in the air, different things that are happening, and they're starting to really speed up.
Yeah, it used to be so gradual, and everybody thought it was going to be very gradual, but now we're getting really extreme weather, and especially with me in particular, in this little area this year, we went into extreme drought, and everybody around us too also got like almost nearly flooding. And then
fires.
Yeah, and then the wildfires are getting real scary too.
Yeah.
Because the
ones
conditions
out west, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then even last year too, in Australia, they went rampant, or was the year before?
It was 2020. It started the crazy year that was 2020. I remember.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, is drought. I don't really follow this, like the weather, this closely with it. But is it not common? It's not common around here, right?
Not around here.
It happens. Does it happen though, or is it
yeah,
like?
It happens.
Okay.
I just don't remember any year where I've been paying attention to the weather that I've been alive for that it's been this bad in this particular locality. We had I believe 5 inches total, although we got another ½ inch last night. And I think we were supposed to be near 30 for the year's total, and we're only at 5.5, 6. And
we're only at 5.5 or 6 for the whole season.
That's what I've gotten from my rain gauge, and then also the rain gauge at Prairie Crossing corroborates
Since
most
when?
of that. The beginning of the year, since it started raining. The first snow actually helped out a lot too, because it dumped on us, of course, in February, and then that melt. A lot of it went into the ground in the healthy areas. But another thing, getting back to the stuff that sort of bothers me about it, is that in the agricultural fields where it's compacted, the snow melted so quickly that it ran off instead of soaking into the ground, and so it sloughed off a bunch of the soil with it and carried it with it as it gained momentum going downhill through the little rivulets and channels that it forms. And so they put their fertilizer down in the fall too, and so all of that stuff that was really highly fertilized topsoil washes into the creek, and it also has other chemicals from their spraying and whatnot, and residue stuff that really disrupts the water system, and then just continues to go downstream to whichever bigger river it gets to. It goes into that too.
So the way to not have that happen is to not do the fertilizer in the...
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be an option for them because the system they use is sort of set in stone, and it's like a recipe that they follow. But there are other alternative agricultural methods where cover cropping would be used in organic farming and sustainable farming, where you put a crop of either wheat or other grain that'll grow over the winter and keep stuff in place, even if there is rain over the winter, which we've been getting more often too.
Yeah.
And then come spring, if it does thaw quickly, the roots have kept the soil a little fluffier too, and they'll use water as the snow melts into it, or if there's a big rain event. And it also, just having the roots in the soil, keep it anchored. And if you look at construction sites, you'll see that one of the first things they do after they've finished grading is they put down that straw or mesh with grass seed in it. And because the grass is going to root, and the roots are what keep the soil in place. If they don't do that, then all that loose soil is going to wash right down, and they're going to have to go right back and push it back and regrade it. But in farming, they don't go back and push the soil back to where it was. It's not economically feasible or possible, because usually the soil leaves permanently and goes into the rivers or streams or puddles somewhere into a wetland, which then isn't good for the wetland either, because then the excess nutrients usually cause weedy species to grow as opposed to the native species. So there is, a whole bunch of deterioration.
That's just what I was thinking.
I had a feeling you were going to... We understand everything that you just said, yes.
I do understand it. I could never repeat it.
No.
But it made perfect sense, you know?
It just, it takes a second to process all of it.
And I guess what I'm
like
what
a lot
I'm
of words.
How could we can we change this with big farming or no?
It would have to be policy changes from the top down almost, from governmental regulations, because as long as it's legal to do it that way, or there's no fees or impositions for it, and they're also being actively subsidized for that method as well, then it's not going to change, because, I mean, the farmers are trying to make a living, and I understand that, and it's just because that's the way to make the best living right now, because we subsidize so heavily towards that system.
And it's fast.
And it's sort of almost guaranteed, just because they've tried it so often. But there's a lot of mounting evidence too, and especially with the microbiologists, ecologists and stuff will all agree that it's not sustainable, and that it is collapsing the lifeblood of the soil, which is the microbes, organic matter, and the chemical structure of it. And so the big farmers only put down 3 nutrients when they replenish them with their fertilizers, which are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And the organic system relies on all of the nutrients being present. And one thing I realized that was pretty drastic was when I took my field back from industrial agriculture to restore it, I ran a soil test, and a few of the things that were incredibly low, the most important one was calcium. It was sort of off the charts low. And calcium, as I've learned from all my research with soil and stuff, is the king of moderating all of the biological and chemical and physical properties of the soil. And
calcium.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Nobody would really think that.
You wouldn't think that, yeah.
Because, you don't hear about calcium being a huge amount of calcium in certain plants or fruits or vegetables or leafy greens, but it's all over the place, and healthy soil has a huge amount of calcium in it too, which then makes you healthy too.
Okay.
But without the calcium, the soil actually, especially around here with excess magnesium, but that's too complicated, it compacts, and so it gets really tight structured. Instead of being loose and fluffy where you can play in it like a sandbox almost, it compacts into a concrete almost.
Oh.
And that doesn't allow the water to penetrate or air or roots to grow through it, and it also disallows for easy access from microbes and earthworms and other insects. And so the deterioration of the soil is mostly from the compaction, which comes from over-tillage and literally just driving on top of it with huge machines every year. And especially if it's wet, compaction's even worse, because then it's soft soil that gets pressed flat and all the air escapes from it. And it's sort of, I mean, you can see that in trails when you see where a car is driven off-road repeatedly.
Yeah.
It compacts it and kills it, and nothing grows there. And then eventually, especially if it's on a hill, it ruts out, because then all of the water that washes over it brings the soil that doesn't have roots anchoring it, which is where it's compacted severely, washes it out. And so it's similar, almost exactly the same circumstances on agricultural fields sometimes, because it just gets over compacted and the stuff won't grow, and then they disallow it from growing actively as well too.
Is that just a big farm thing, or is that also, like, do you use big machinery on your farm too, or is it?
I use a large tractor, but it's a compact or a subcompact. I forgot what they call it. It's about 3,000 pounds, but the big ones they use are, I don't know for sure, but they're probably in the 20 to 50,000 pound range, which are really, really big machines, and they're super heavy. And they do distribute their weight on bigger tires, but it's still a huge amount of weight. And they go over it constantly for both the tillage and then the harvest and the spraying that they do and the fertilizer application.
And what do they spray?
Mostly right now it's Roundup. And to kill any of the weeds that are going to be competing with the other plants, because the plants that they plant are the genetically modified corn or soy that then can handle the Roundup. So the Roundup gets metabolized by it because it has a microbes gene, I believe, that can break it down inside of those specific plants. But that's why it's like a Frankenplant, because they transpose that gene and sort of injected it into it. They may have more elegant ways of doing it now, but that's how they began it in the 90s.
In your opinion, what is the risk to humans with Roundup?
Oh, Roundup? It's been pretty well established that it's not a good thing for humans at all. And the studies that are floating it along being legal are pretty much funded by the big companies too. And so they say, well, we need a study that proves that it's not acutely toxic or has long-term effects. But the long-term effects are the ones that are bothersome, because there are a lot of people in this world and everybody reacts a little bit differently sometimes. And so some people can be exceptionally sensitive to it, where other people, will be around it their whole lives and nothing happens about it.
It's probably hard to test too with the long-term effects, because it could be related to that, or it could be related to something more that happened closer to
exactly
their symptoms or something. So I feel like that's like
hard to prove.
It's hard to
if
prove.
It's not
that
acute,
it's from
exceptionally difficult to prove anything, and that's what a lot of companies sort of bank on too. Is like, well, it's not acutely toxic, even though it's a high likelihood there's going to be long-term effects. They're going to be hard to prove, so we're going to sell this and make a lot of money until they are proven.
Okay, and then put a bunch of stuff in fine print.
Yeah, and
there's always all those warnings, in fine print.
I don't remember the website's name, but there is a website where they discuss some of the class action lawsuits and help people get involved in them if they were involved in like getting diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after operating around Roundup and stuff. There are a lot of lawsuits that are going against Bayer Monsanto right now.
Were you going to bring up Marissa?
Well, Marissa is, Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I wonder, but still. But I was going to say, if you could come up with that, a couple of those websites, and send it to us later, we can put it, in the episode description or somewhere, in the info.
Yeah,
because maybe some people.
It's really interesting too, because they still sell the stuff on the shelf, and I've seen people literally spraying it without any protective equipment, and you're like, ooh, now that I know what I know, I should probably try and tell you. But this is America, so I'm not going to try and tell people like, you can't do that. It's more of, that's dangerous.
Just have a warning about this.
But
this is dangerous. Yeah.
Go up to them and say you can't do it. They'll shoot you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it feels in America. People just keep shooting people. That's a whole nother episode.
The overreactivity and
So there are things that you can do. Obviously, you can't necessarily. You can contribute to fighting, big business or big pharma or whatever. Like to. Try to make changes, but in the meantime, so as to not go crazy, there are ways to make small changes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you said that could really have its own seed and just go, out in all these spokes is educating kids.
Yeah, and I feel like that really is a great analogy, is you plant the seeds. You plant the seeds in minds, which are ideas, and then they start to grow, and they just have to be nourished or encouraged along the way here and there. And resilient ideas are going to stick in the mind. And I remember I got a few of mine when I was in probably 3rd grade, which was that the environment is something that's worth protecting. Now that I have this ability to look around and understand that nature is amazing and I love it, that, oh my God, it's possible for it to not be here someday. I took it totally for granted when I was younger, realizing oh, it's so massive, we can never control it. That's true, we can never control it, but we can really mess it up and destroy it and make it not as beautiful or healthy.
And it's forgiving, you said, nature, once it's treated well.
It really is, yeah. Because one of the examples is my back field was industrially farmed for 30 plus years, and the really bad stuff happened 90s on, because that's when the GMOs came out, and then blanket use of Roundup for that as well. but it's healed really quickly. It has a whole lot of new diversity. The soil is improving. There's different animal life out there. I actually witnessed an endangered species slither away. It was the green snake, and of course, I was out in my tractor and I was tilling, and I'm like, every time I till, I'm like, I know I'm doing damage, but I have to make sure it's justified and I'm tilling for the right reason and not do it too often. And I think the green snake crawled in front of me as I was tilling, and I think that was sort of a message being like, you're right about what you're thinking, because you just ruined some habitat and I had to run away. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, so yeah, maybe I should leave as much of it alone as I can and just manage it so that it stays as naturally beautiful as I can, but manage invasives, but that's about it.
Hard to balance, that
hands off.
Yeah, little snake.
Yeah.
So how
would snakes are cute, personally.
You do?
Yes. Yeah.
Like big cobras? Like,
I wouldn't want to get
snakes.
No, not necessarily those.
If they're
little tiny snakes, I think, are very cute. And I've
ones
seen
that have
snakes.
mouths small enough that they can't really bite you easily.
Yeah, okay.
I know someone that had a pet snake, and it just was probably a foot long, probably a centimeter,
Oh yeah, pet snakes are great because then they understand that it's chill, and they'll just wrap around you and want your warmth.
And it was just sweet. It had a cute little face. I mean, and it just hung out on my wrist, and I was like, wow. I have a new appreciation for snakes because of this.
Did it let you pet them? Kind of like,
Yeah, you
got to go with the scales, not against.
Okay.
Kind of like cat fur. Don't want to go against the hair, but
okay. All right.
Yeah,
and
it was
also
nice.
when they flick their tongues out, they're actually tasting the air and feeling for vibrations, I believe, too.
Oh.
Because snakes are really sensitive to vibrations too, because they'll be like sitting on the ground all the time. So a lot of what they feel is the vibrations and sound and other stuff. I'm not sure if they have ears though.
I don't know. I don't remember that in biology.
Yeah, I can't recall either. I just remember learning about the tongue and being like, that's pretty cool.
I've heard something like that, yeah.
So how would you do this on your 17-acre property with kids? What's your vision? What are you thinking going forward?
Kids would be great, especially once they were old enough to help. And if they were interested too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, quite often with farming, it is perceived, I believe, as sort of a task, chore, or a job instead of a joy. And so I feel like one of my main challenges too is to balance the farming with enjoyment of it, so that I don't burn out and it doesn't become a chore or something I don't look forward to anymore.
Yeah.
And this year was a challenge to that too, especially with the drought, because I got so sick and tired of watering, and I got a cramp in my arm from having the hose just watering with it all day.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was only in my right arm, and I couldn't figure out why, and then it clicked, and I'm like, I'm a righty, and I was watering for 3 hours today.
And you didn't think to switch.
Yeah. And I do that a lot too, so that's one of the other things that farming takes a toll on your body, especially if you're not mindful about keeping things balanced or keeping good form and posture, lifting with your legs. Because for 3 or 4 years when I worked for the other farm, I'm like, I'm invincible, I'm so strong, and I'd bend over wrong, and then I'd be carrying things wrong or going excessive because I'm like, I'm so strong. But it's really the overuse and the repetitiveness that has really been the most damaging, I think, to my body, because it is certain motions I really can't do anymore. Like I can't bend over to weed. I have to sort of kneel down because my back has been in such bad shape for a little while now, and of course the suspected Lyme's, I think, has really been giving my spine and my other joints a run for their money, because it just can't. It doesn't seem to be improving.
So what kind of things do you do to remember that you enjoy it, or what kind of things do you do that make you enjoy farming and what you do?
For me, that would be taking the time to actually just stop and observe a natural system in its action. Just like sort of watch some minnows and watch for just more than a few seconds and see, like, are they fighting each other? Are they swimming in a school? Are they going to run away if I move? Are they near the surface? Are they looking for food? And so it always just sort of like doing a little swan dive into the deeper layers of natural existence around me is what I really enjoy about it. I think it's a
and that's
nice. Yeah.
That's meditative. Anything.
Yeah, it's very zen to me.
So people are like, oh, meditation, but anything meditative, or anything is meditative if it pulls you into the moment, where you're so entranced in the moment that you're no longer thinking about, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or I regret doing that, and da da da. You know, you're so, like, usually conversation can be that way, you know, just coloring. They talk about adult coloring. So you're like
finger painting.
You've done some of that recently.
I've done some of that. Yeah. And then for you, you know, studying nature, period, and really thinking about it and like, wow, it's so cool, and just like, so that's basically meditating.
Yeah, and
it's
sort of like a intimacy that I get to really enjoy with the nature and anything that's going on, because then I can just sort of make it my own and experience it, but with the same understanding that it's sort of ubiquitously around us too. Like, I'm not experiencing this alone or exclusively. This happens all the time. You just need to take the time to observe it and appreciate it.
And do you find that puts you much behind, or does it actually make you more efficient by taking a little time to watch?
It depends on the task at hand, but usually I'm pretty good about returning to what I'm supposed to be doing after I take a little break of just observing something, because usually it is something that just yanks my attention, like a bird will take off that I hadn't noticed was there, and like, wow, or an insect will fly by or land on me and like, I haven't seen this one yet, or I'll find a plant sitting in with the other plants that it wasn't supposed to be there, and I'm like, how'd you get here? What are you?
What are you?
Yeah. Hello, nice to meet you, but what are you? But yeah, it's just sort of like those little moments of allowing myself to be distracted, but also understanding that there's a value in the distraction, but there's also value in accomplishing the task at hand and staying focused and on track.
You know, there's a school of thought that we can actually slow our time down in our nucleus by slowing down. Like, you actually become more efficient by doing things more deliberately and slower, and stopping for a moment and pausing, and by just putting that out there, all of a sudden you get everything just falls into place and you're done.
I've noticed that too, and sort of along the same lines is, I feel like when I was younger, the world moved a lot slower. And time went a lot slower. And I feel like the phenomena for that is that your brain is making habits. And when you make habits, you don't think things out as much. You allow your habit to do its thing. And it's sort of like autopilot. And so I feel like when we're younger or experiencing something new, I like that feeling. That's what I get into, is that feeling of mind expansion and being totally mindful of everything. Just because you think it works this way, or that you assume something, it doesn't mean it is. And that's why I like nature, because it makes you not assume at all and sort of just appreciate what is right in the moment.
I can agree with that. I mean, I told you I was on the Olympic Peninsula recently in the middle of the national forest out there that I can't remember. Olympic, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That would make sense based on what I just said. But yeah, it was so nice to just sit in the middle of the forest, and like, me and my friend that I was with, we just watched like the waves go over the rocks and stuff on this little creek.
The little things.
Yeah, like the
that are
sounds
happening all
of
the
it.
time, but you need to take time to put your
like
attention to
appreciate
them
it, yeah.
and appreciate them. Yeah.
I always say it's like a full sensory experience. Like, you get the sense, you get the sights, you get like sounds happening, you get to feel everything, you know, like nature in general. Like, there's just no ending to how amazing it is.
That's true, yeah. And I love the smells too.
The smells are awesome, yeah.
It's interesting when you go into nature and you're like, what do you smell? And they're like, nothing. And you're like, exactly. It smells pure.
It feels like,
air.
The smell of fresh
There's
air
no
is the
exhaust
best.
from cars. There's no perfume from other people. There's no like weird smells that you would find
chemicals,
from asphalt.
Cleaners, you know, all that. Wow.
That's why I really appreciate being on the farm too, and being surrounded by for the most part, by open space and natural areas, because one side of us is used to be industrial agriculture, and they refurbished it or restored it into prairie, and so we're really excited to have that next to us.
On the west side?
On the west side.
Wow.
And so they made that big area into almost all prairie, which is then connects with the open space area. And
the local farmer doesn't come up to your property anymore?
Oh, they do on the other three sides.
Oh, but at least the one
but
side.
there's one side that we have respite.
Very good. So, so, like, what you had mentioned with the farm that you might want to get away from farmers markets and all that, because if a drought happens, then what, and that you have other ideas for how you can educate people, how you can help yourself with the work there. You mentioned, laborers, children, but what, tours, you thought about tours,
yeah,
right?
We've been trying to, and we have done a few of them, they've gone really well, is educational tours, and we've reached out to some homeschool people, and because we had one person that did homeschooling, and she was helping us out, and we met her through the market. It was all sort of like a community thing.
Yeah.
And it went really well. We had the kids come out and build little mason bee homes out of some miscanthus twigs, some mud from our fields, and then the little berry boxes, the cardboard ones that we have. And we just walked around. They would ask any questions, and we caught a few bugs and put them in a jar so that everybody could look without having to touch them if they didn't want to. And it was
like camp.
It was a lot like
we'd had to do educational or like environmental education at camp too. It's interesting.
And you remember that as a kid, right? I mean,
yeah.
I know you were the counselor, but when you
really do pick up on it. You got yourself there.
I did it on myself this time. What the fuck? What the fuck? That's all I gotta say. Okay, this has to be explicit now.
Yeah. We'll do the little check mark on it.
Parental advisory.
Yeah.
But it imprints on you, right? Like the Girl Scout things, where we had to get our little patches. Mm-hmm. And
some of my favorite memories were those, especially in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always loved when I was taught how to build a fire and stuff, and you had to do it from scratch and stuff.
That was my favorite, and I still do that.
I still don't do it very well.
Every season, I'll go out and be like, I want to do this by all from scratch. And
that's impressive.
well, I use flint and steel.
I've never been good at that.
Yeah, okay.
I've never been good. I've learned the theory of it, but I never tried
an actual bow where you use a friction to start a fire. But someday I'll do that, just to say I have. But I tried it once, and it takes so long, and it's a lot of effort. But
yeah.
Well, I think we might try a tour out there. We had mentioned that, right?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see once.
Should we film it and then?
Could we
put it on our
we have people
channels and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you
behind
could
the
film
camera.
Parts of it at
we
least.
could like
that'd be cool.
go.
We could do like a filming thing, and then
how about
give you some more publicity too.
No more secrets on site.
Yeah, within the next couple weeks would be brilliant, because the goldenrod is still blooming, and then all the asters are coming out with some of the late sunflowers. So a lot of the prairie plants are still in full bloom. And
okay, in the next couple weeks on location.
Okay, let's discuss.
We'll talk to our people.
Sounds good.
Our handlers.
We were so Oprah-like today, or Ellen DeGeneres, or prima donna-like, in the sense that Katie and I were putting on makeup while the guys were getting ready for us or waiting for us.
Just literally waiting for us.
And we were just like, whatever. We're just putting on mascara.
But we did offer Jeff some blush.
We did.
Yeah. All natural is lovely for me, but
we
also,
got like this. You got a little bit of red on you anyway, so I think
He pinched his cheeks.
I did, yeah. Natural blush.
Bit your lips, all those tricks that girls used to do for little color.
Okay, so let me go back to my outline. Natural.
Oh, excuse me. I gotta read this outline. Oh, natural.
Oh, the kids. One thing I do really want to talk to you about, and you and I have connected on this, is it's important for many, many reasons that we restore people's faith in the human immune system. Mm-hmm. And we can learn from nature about how things balance out. Same with our human bodies, right?
Yeah.
And I'd like your perspective on that. And you've mentioned that the immune system is incredible, just like nature is, right?
Oh, it's beautiful and brilliant. I mean, if it weren't, we'd all be dead instantly just from the microbes living on our skin and inside of our guts.
Okay.
They'd attack us, and we'd have no recourse, but we do.
And
we've lived with them, and they've been around longer than we have. So in our entire evolution and development and existence, we've had them around. So why would microbes not be important or completely enmeshed in our own existence too?
And also bacteria is good for our immune system.
Yeah.
To learn to fight it off or deal with it somehow,
Yeah,
right?
and especially when they're young, people are starting to discover now that the kids get played in the mud and were allowed to get dirty, have much better immune systems, a lot less incidence of asthma and allergies and autoimmune disorders and stuff.
Interesting.
And I was lucky that I was one of those mud pie kids making you couldn't keep me out of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I did it in a white frilly dress.
You
Did you?
I don't remember.
Did Grandma
I
get so
could've.
mad?
Grandma got so mad. So,
Yeah, I believe
it. Like now I'm not really frilly. I mean, this is, more often I'm in t-shirt and stuff, but
You're in your Sunday best, rolling in the,
but
the mud.
we would argue almost every day. I want to put on my white frilly dress, which was my Sunday dress, my Sunday school dress.
Mm-hmm.
No, Mary, no. And she'd put me, like in the summer, in a tank top and shorts. Well, I'd sneak back in and change into my white frilly dress, and then I'd go play in the mud.
And at that point, it becomes like a piece of art, the way the mud splashes or something, you know?
She would just get so
Jackson
mad.
Pollock.
Exactly, yeah.
Mary,
Mom, this is
Beth,
art. Come on.
I'm expressing myself.
You're 3, stop it.
You're 3 years old, huh?
Like before school, like 3 to 5, or whatever. She said I was just obsessed with that white frilly dress, but I wanted to play in the mud and eat the mud. I always ate it. Did you
Yeah.
eat it?
I'm sure I ate a good amount, and I still eat small amounts of dirt, and I don't truly try and wash my vegetables off unless
Right.
there's obviously something on it. Like if there's a slug on it, I'm like, ew, I'm not going to eat you.
Right.
Slugs can actually carry things that we don't want to have in us, but for the most part, unless there's poop or you suspect there was like fresh poop from some kind of, usually a mammal too, and at that, a mammal that doesn't eat just plants, because usually herbivore poop is relatively safe.
Okay.
Little known
Good
fact.
to know.
But I don't wash it off, and I eat a lot of different stuff, and I think that really helps with. If I hadn't, I think I'd be in such bad shape with my immune system, because it already overreacts, and I've gotten rashes growing up, and still have rashes, and get eczema and all sorts of weird reaction type things, and I'm allergic to yellow jackets and
Oh, wow.
have strange allergic reactions to some other stuff too, and mold and but I think it'd be a lot worse, and because on my mom's side of the family we all have weird allergies, it seems,
Okay,
and
yeah.
sensitivities. But I think having exposure early on really helped me out, because then my body was sort of creating its catalog of being like, oh, I recognize you didn't cause problems before. It's sort of like your immune system's a bouncer, and it's like, you can go in. And then sometimes it'll see one and be like, you've caused a problem before, I'm going to have to sort of deactivate you, but then you can go ahead. And then there's the troublemakers where they're like, oh, you've caused a problem every time, we're going to completely deactivate you and get you out of here completely.
But either way, your system is working.
It is, and it's so smart about which ones
Yeah.
are good and which ones are not good. And it seems like a lot of the autoimmune disorders, though, are being they seem to be sort of a confusion of the immune system, where the immune system is like, well, I forgot, or I can't really quite see clearly or differentiate between the good and the bad, and so then it attacks either the body's own cells or overreacts improperly to stuff that's a good guy. And I believe celiac is sort of an example, or leaky gut syndrome, which can then lead to, is when your own when your own immune system recognizes the beneficial bacteria that are in your gut as being an enemy. And I believe that's what happens, is your own immune system then starts attacking them through your intestine walls, which then damage your intestines.
And so what can you do with an autoimmune disease to reverse it? Are there times when medication has to...
Well, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not exactly
Yeah,
sure on
exactly.
that,
I know, that's
but
true. But you were
um,
going to be one.
if you could...
So you're close.
Yeah, keep yourself as
More than we
healthy as
are.
possible in all the other aspects. I mean, health, in my opinion, is a holistic whole. And like I was talking about...
What? Did you all see that? Jeff, did you see that?
If he had his headphones on, he would hear it. It was pretty...
Who
Was
hit
it a
that
good
microphone?
smack? I didn't see.
Oh.
Thank you. See, he's on Team Katie. Team Katie.
Or team neutral. But go on, yeah,
I
like
did-
keep yourself
Sorry, that made me
healthy.
Yeah, and I
Or
had a
team
good
neutral.
analogy. Like I was saying with the the graph before, like when I was feeling good and going up too high and down too low. Like, it's not just a line, and neither is health, and that's just mental health, is the up and down. And so the graph of overall health should be a nebulous thing where it's stretching itself in a whole bunch of different ways, because we know too that our health is attached to our physical health is attached to our mental health, and vice versa. And so then they both affect each other, and then there's going to be like your nutrition, your exercise, your exposure to sunlight and fresh air outdoors, and then of course then we could also talk about the bad influences that are going to be attacking that nebulous bubble that's trying to increase itself in size, that's supposed to be your overall health. Would be the nasty chemicals and the poor nutrition, the stress, the lack of sleep, alcohol, I hate to admit, can be one in excess.
But moderation.
Yeah, moderation is fine. And that's another point I wanted to make too, is that...
You cut back to a bottle a night. It's
I did. And that's a lot for me.
moderate, yeah.
But it goes along with those paper cuts I was talking about last session.
Right, yeah.
If you continuously attack, then there's no opportunity for recovery, and so then it becomes chronic and very damaging and dangerous. And nature and the immune system, I think, are very similar in that way, where they can be very robust, but as soon as you start attacking it, it needs recovery periods. Otherwise, it can't regain its full strength before it's then challenged again.
Got it. I like that analogy.
Continuously
That is a good
challenge your
analogy.
immune system, it won't recover nicely after being constantly bombarded and challenged.
Okay.
Same with like a field where you till it and poison it with herbicides and exclude all of the plants that would then typically heal it. In fact, yeah, tangent. Weeds are nature's engineers for healing the land. When the weeds come in there, it's because there's an opportunity for them to exist, and they're there to heal the land and put it back so that the higher level and higher diversity can exist again. And I've seen this happen in my field where it was barren, and areas I haven't tilled are the most diverse. The ones I've tilled, it's all weeds, and they're trying to reclaim it for me.
Oh.
Or for it, or for nature.
Do you
for
leave
whoever.
weeds then?
A lot of them I do. Some of them I try and control, especially around the plants as they're growing. But then once some plants get going enough, they can exclude the weeds. They have enough strength to be like, you know what, I'm taking these resources, you can't have them. And they keep the roots of other plants under control. There are some weeds that are really nasty too that'll get in there. And it's sort of like weeds are, it's a bad analogy, but sort of like disease, where there's a whole bunch of different ones, or microbes, because there's a whole bunch of different microbes out there. And so some of them are good, some of them are bad. They all kind of work together to balance the system. And that's what they want, is balance. I mean, that's what life kind of aims for, and if it didn't aim for, would extinguish itself very quickly.
And so that's what goes back to balance with our bodies too.
Balance within and
you know,
balance
with our
externally,
lifestyle,
yeah.
with what we put in our bodies, with our, and like even extreme exercise can kill you.
Oh, absolutely. And I knew a guy in high school, he pushed himself so hard and so fast, he had to have 2 knee replacements at age 21.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. He didn't allow himself recovery time. And that's kind of the lesson. That's where I learned that lesson the hardest, was that you need recovery time. Otherwise, you're just going to keep damaging. And even bodybuilders are very aware of that. They can't repeat the leg lift out or leg workout on day 2. They have to alternate. You can work out every day, but you can't destroy your muscles to the point of they almost don't function. They need to rebuild.
And they usually take like a full day or 2 off too.
Yes.
Like it's like I think they do 4 or 5 days a week where they're like training, and then they take a day or so.
Yeah.
Like upper lower
results,
rest, upper
yeah.
lower
It is
rest.
pretty interesting how in tune they get with how the body works too, when you're trying to make it function at its epitome and apex, that you actually need to respect it completely and understand its natural cycles and rhythms so that you can push yourself a little bit further.
There's even a disease where you build up so much lactic acid that you poison yourself. I've known triathletes that, I mean, people through here that work out cardio so hard all the time that they started to get flu-like symptoms, and they actually ended up hospitalized.
Wow.
And it turned out to be, there's an actual name for it, I don't have it right now, but it actually is your lactic acid in your muscles that's being released from all the exercise is killing you.
It acidifies your
Yep.
body.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, so even exercise can be too much, you know?
Yeah.
And even like certain healthy foods, you can't eat, a whole room full of spinach, right?
Yeah, because you need a balance too. It would be an overabundance of the nutrients it has, and you'd get sick of it too, honestly.
I mean, think about this whole room.
I was actually picturing this whole room with spinach.
I love
Cooked or
spinach.
fresh? That's the question. Because you can fit more cooked, I
Oh my
think,
God.
than
Cooked.
fresh.
A room full of cooked spinach would be like... I can't even imagine how much that would be, because it
Get a
reduces
little
so
queasy
much.
thinking about that.
You know, you throw in like, oh, this is way too much spinach. You throw it in the pan. You come back 2 minutes later. You're like, what happened to all the
It's
spinach? It evaporated.
It's like a 16th of the size. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So okay, don't eat a whole room full of cooked spinach.
Even if it's creamed.
fresh is okay.
The cream adds calories.
There you go. And does that expand it a little bit?
It would, give it more volume.
Okay.
The spinach would go further.
Probably fill you up a little further.
How
though.
many
A little
how
faster.
many acres of spinach do you think would fit in this room?
Oh man, see,
Cooked.
that'd be a really tough question to answer because the yield of spinach is so varying and throughout the season too. Like the most amount of spinach you could grow on an acre would probably be a staggering, unreasonable amount of spinach. But in normal conditions, especially with weed pressure and lack of water that we've been having and unseasonable warm weather, which usually slows it down or makes it go to seed, you could get a very surprisingly disappointing amount of spinach out of that. But right in the middle, where most farmers would tend to aim for, you could, off an acre of spinach, man, I don't know if I could do that calculation off the top of my head.
But you want to.
I can tell you're really excited.
Probably
His mind is worried right now. Like, this is...
thousands of pounds fresh.
Really?
But you can also cut spinach, the leaves, and have it regrow. And so you can do a cut and come again harvest, it's called, where you cut the leaves off once, you don't take the roots out, and it regrows from that cut spot
More?
as long as you don't cut too low.
Does it
More
grow
spinach.
bigger?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't grow bigger than the first harvest usually because it's sort of stunted and it's like, you hit me. And just like, as we've been talking about, you can't cut it again and again and again.
Okay.
You can cut it like 2 or 3 times and you got to let it recover in between and put some of that energy that it's getting from the bigger leaves down into its roots because that's where it's going to pull the energy from again when it gets cut. It's like, put some energy from the roots back to making leaves so that we can make because their leaves are their energy system. That's where they get their energy from the sun and make sugar.
So we can fill up our room.
You probably could. An acre of spinach would fill this room up, especially fresh spinach when it's all lofty and fluffy. But the cooked spinach, it would probably come up to like there. It'd be real cold and wet by the time it got here cooked.
And just think how it would smell.
Cold, wet
Terrible.
spinach.
Oh, the smell going into the massage room.
Somebody's getting massage.
Nothing like cold and wet spinach to devour.
But I do remember it was Popeye got me into liking spinach when I was younger. Who'd have thought that would do it?
Do you know that reference?
Popeye, I know.
Okay.
Popeye the
Popeye,
Sailor Man.
Sailor Man, he had a big bicep.
He always
He'd eat his spinach and get energy.
Oh, I
and
didn't know he
get
ate
real
spinach.
strong. Yeah, he had it in a
so
can
she doesn't
too.
actually know the reference, yeah.
So it was gross that
That was like his big
spinach
thing.
was
He
not
ate
very
spinach.
good.
But he had a bicep. That's what I thought his big thing was, his big bicep.
But he
Look at my-
ate
look at my
canned
bicep.
spinach.
To get
To
the
get the
biceps.
bicep?
Yep.
Yes.
That does have protein in it.
Well, spinach actually does. All leafy greens have a surprising amount of protein
Really?
in them, actually.
Okay.
And people
That's
don't
new.
realize that, but there is quite a bit of protein in almost all leafy greens, along with a lot of other really good phytochemicals, the minerals, vitamins.
And calcium.
I do
And
feel
calcium,
better. And calcium, as we discovered. Yeah. I do feel better after I eat a leafy green versus like iceberg lettuce.
It's kind of like if there were spokespeople or lobbyists for the broccoli or leafy green industry, it would be the only thing you ever hear about because it has so many health benefits and it's so good for you. And some of it can really taste really good when you get it that's grown properly. And not.
Let's talk about iceberg lettuce. Is there anything in that?
Oh, farmer says no.
The way iceberg lettuce is grown is usually sort of an industrialized process, I believe. Unless it's organic iceberg, then it'll probably usually have a lot more green to it then too.
Okay.
The greener your vegetables are, usually the healthier they are. That's sort of an assumption you can kind of make. And if it's grown organically, then you can be guaranteed it won't have the herbicide, or, well, usually they won't put herbicides on leafy greens or anything like that, but pesticide residue or fungicide, those are the ones you'd want to worry about, because the fungicides can mess with your gut biome and also have other effects, and then the pesticides, they mess with your mind and other parts of your body too.
Mess with your mind.
Yeah, like the neonicotinoid herbicides that they use for a lot of bugs for killing them are the ones that give you twitches, and I think I can't vouch for this, but I feel like they've linked those to Alzheimer's as well, and it's sad seeing. I've seen a lot of videos of animals that have been poisoned by those types of poisons. They're very twitchy and drooly and not looking good, and who knows if they recovered either. But yeah, the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides are very scary things, and they're allowed to just spray them quite rampantly, and in an aerosolized version too, so that if there's a little bit of a wind that day, it's going to travel quite a distance. And the other scary thing about Roundup too, I forgot to mention, is it's a endocrine disruptor, so it works on the tiniest amounts too, so it affects your hormone systems, and they're showing that a lot of hormone systems are affected by the tiniest amounts of Roundup. And so if it's floating through the air and you've smelled it, that's enough of a dose to affect you, essentially. That's what parts per trillion are. That's which is what the endocrine system works on. Is it's not parts per 100 or parts per 1,000, which is like what you would find in most recipes and other stuff. But
parts per trillion.
It's just a tiniest whiff of it. And we can smell at parts per billion, I believe, but parts per trillion, or it's where hormones come into play. And it's like you just need the tiniest amount, and it activates the system inside of you to then either misfire, or when it's supposed to happen, it happens perfectly and it's great. But yeah, it's the nuances and the littlest, tiniest things that affect everything. And it's,
if anything comes out of this episode or these 2 episodes, it's like perhaps we could just pause more often and think about our actions, think about what we're putting into our bodies, look at nature, perhaps go to the Google and do some research, or text Jeff Chapman.
Or read books. The books are great.
Or read books, or let's start to learn about how it all works, because
That's clutch.
What was it? Oh, because the books don't change.
Books don't change. Internet does. I'll say it again. Books don't change. Internet does.
That's why I love my old collection of books too, especially from the ones like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. In the 90s, but
you can see probably the evolution of what they were studying back then, and maybe if it's the same or if it's changed. Or...
Yeah, especially in the plant, and like I have a lot of health books that are older too, and it's really interesting looking back and being like, oh, well, yeah, they thought this and that, and now we've expanded on that. Perhaps it's not that that's irrelevant, but it's that we've learned so much more and progressed that
sometimes
we have a better perspective on it, and we can.
But going back to the basics is
Oh yeah, that's why I really appreciated the. That's why I wanted to get into the plant sciences and stuff like that, and initially explore plant medicine and stuff like that, and discover new stuff, because it is really crazy how many of our, I think almost all of our medications are either inspired from or taken directly from plants or microbes, and a lot of different. Especially the antibiotics. The antibiotic story for penicillin is really cool, where they discovered it on, I believe, a melon that came from a farmer's market, like not 20 to 50 miles from here, I think. Might have been Northbrook, I'm not sure.
I remember this, yeah.
And so some lady had a melon from a farmer's market. It started growing mold and other junk on it because it was too old. And I think she had a microbiology friend, and there was an interesting patch of mold growing on one of them that was excluding all the other microbes around it from being able to develop. So she was like, this looks interesting. Hey, you want to check this out? And showed it to the microbiologist, and that was sort of where the story of penicillin began. They investigated it, and they were like, it has abiotic features that are creating a dead zone around it, and they figured out it makes the penicillin chemical, and it came from penicillium, which is a whole wide range of different species. They found one species that made it, and I also think, like, are these still in existence around here? Have we extinguished or extinct some of these, caused extinction events for some of these microbes that could change the world like penicillin did?
Yeah.
And
in a positive way.
yeah, it's just sort of crazy to think that all these, it happened from chance, circumstance. One of, arguably the most influential drug on the planet to ever exist so far.
It's helped me a lot. I've had a lot of bacterial. It's bacterial, right?
Yeah.
I've had a lot of infections like that, and antibiotics are the only thing that works.
Oh my God, I was a strep kid growing up. I had so many
strep
strep
kid
tests.
too.
I lost my gag reflex.
Yeah.
The nurses would take my strep test and they'd be like, "Whoa, you didn't gag?" And I'd be like, "Yup."
Wow.
Oh my God. That's impressive, man.
Yeah. And then when I got to college, wasn't it something I wanted to brag about anymore? But yeah.
Hey, can we test it?
Freshman dorms, cafeteria. Yeah.
Oh boy.
It comes and goes. You use it or lose it.
Wow.
Interesting.
Like it.
So do you?
I don't practice anymore.
I don't practice anymore.
I almost stopped myself from asking because it was just a funny question.
Anymore, he says.
Well, I didn't actually practice it, but I would poke at my tonsils because at one point in my childhood they changed texture, and that really concerned me. But then I started getting what are called tonsilliths. They're tonsil stones, but it's basically like
those little white things.
Stuff to get stuck in there, and I was always trying to poke them out, which is probably not a good idea. You can really injure yourself. I bled a couple times, but
yeah, I've been told that too.
Mm-hmm. But it's also like one of those things I have. I like picking things and picking things apart, especially on me. It's like super interesting if it's on me.
Oh my gosh, if I have a bruise, I love touching it, and I don't know why. It's like it's really
I do that too. I touch it a
like
lot
a new
just to
thing.
sort of test where it's at. I'm like, is it still really hurty? Oh, it's getting better.
But like, what if we go harder?
Yeah, how hard can I go before I damage
really a problem.
that hard?
Yeah, no, I definitely have to inspect new things that pop up, like it's just...
Oh, yeah.
It's just a big playground your body is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's
Get
this?
mosquito bites, you have to kind of like,
Yeah,
are they still there?
Scratch around them, do the crisscross.
Oh, man,
Yeah, oh yeah.
Having eczema, I think one of my greatest annoyances, but pleasures, is itching. It's scratching things. Scratching an itch.
Okay.
Because sometimes it itches so much. And of course, sometimes I'll damage myself scratching too. But the feeling, it's like an addiction.
But
I just love the feeling of satiating it.
Does that make worse?
Always makes it worse. It always makes it worse when I scratch it. But yeah, the sometimes this itching is so fierce and intense with eczema or my rashes that I get from my immune weirdness. That I don't know. It's just so satisfying, but at the same time so damaging.
Wow. That's a poignant statement right there.
Yeah.
Part 3.
Don't scratch things, folks.
Just let it go.
That's the poignancy.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh gosh, Jeff, I think we have a great message here, and I look forward to being on location with No More Secrets.
That sounds awesome, actually. Yeah.
Great, yeah. And we can show you all the crops we're growing. We have
I would love to explore it,
stuff,
yeah.
And we have people that could help film that, right?
Handlers. He looked the other way.
The other way. Oh gosh, anything else, Jeff, that you would like to, I mean, within reason.
Yeah,
like not like
I think one of the
global
most important messages I would like to give is that the power of the connection to nature is sort of so vast and limitless that if you are having a hard time or you feel like you're not, this is how I felt too, but if you feel like you're not on a path that you maybe should be, or you want to appreciate things more, or just, I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, nature it brought me back to where I wanted to kind of be, and it has been sort of the light I follow.
And it's a constant.
It really is. That's one of the best points too, is it's so constant, and the other part too is that nature doesn't try to deceive you. Even though things are hidden from you all the time in nature, it takes quite a lot of effort to discover them or see them in a good perspective for understanding. It never actively tries to deceive you.
It's not manipulative.
Things. No, it's not.
It's not a sociopath.
No, not at all. In fact, probably the exact opposite. It's just so open and
so,
welcoming and accepting and accommodating. And
I was going to say there might be sociopaths hiding in it, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Anyways.
There very well could be things hiding in it that aren't savory, but overall, nature as a whole is just so nurturing and encouraging.
And so if you're in a bad place, you're saying get out there and just
I think so,
spend some time.
Look at a few of the little things that nature has devised, like, because I always love to dive into the little things, the mechanisms of, like, how does a cricket make that noise? And you look at it, and you're like, it's just rubbing its wings together. And it's not its legs like Disney and Gemini Cricket tried to tell us, but some do use their legs. But usually it's their wings, and they have a texture to them that's really interesting, and they think they might even secrete their own resins to do it, to make it like a violin bow, so that it resonates as it rubs and sort of skips a little bit as it rubs, and so it makes that sort of like scratching a record, but real quick.
I never knew that.
No, and I don't know who Gemini Cricket is.
From Pinocchio, the Disney movie, and he was also like one of the little mascots for Disney.
Don't try to explain. She won't know.
Did he talk? Did he have a mouth?
He did. He was a characterized cricket that helped guide. He was sort of like the conscience for Pinocchio when he was a fake boy that was made of wood.
Do you know who Pinocchio?
I do. I know the nose grew.
Whenever
From
he
what?
lied. Oops, sorry. I have to answer all questions.
It'll be like locked in her memory now, hopefully. You didn't even hear it, did you?
I didn't.
So it makes his nose grow.
That should be the next pop culture.
Okay, I'll give you a quiz on our next pop culture quiz.
So Jiminy Cricket didn't do the violin thing?
Oh, well, he actually played a violin, which was hilarious. Didn't he?
What?
Or am I Mandela effect misremembering that Jiminy Cricket
I don't
played
remember that
violin?
personally, but I could be wrong.
You play a violin?
Okay, we got the Google machine going over there.
Because I've been noticing the Mandela effect so often, and
It happens a lot,
Yeah.
right?
What's that?
Remember we talked about it? It's like something that you think happened in history or in your own history.
you're
that
very
just...
convinced of it, that it was one way.
Like you have a
Berenstain
memory of
Bears
it.
is one of them.
What about it?
How do you spell Berenstain Bears?
Berstein. Did I even do that?
It's actually Berenstain. There's no steen at the end.
It's
isn't that
stain?
Stain. It's
I
like
don't think I was
stain,
even close.
Berenstain.
Honestly.
Yeah. Oh, it's,
No, I thought it was
and I
steen.
misremembered it every single time. Even still, when they're like, I get the quiz again. I haven't learned my lesson. I say Berenstain, but it's Berenstain.
Oh, I thought it was. The answer is no. By the way, he did not play violin.
Oh, that's right. That's
The
right.
grasshopper
Yeah.
did? Is there a
And James
grasshopper in
and the
the same
Giant Peach.
movie?
No, that's
Another Disney movie.
James and what?
the giant peach.
Oh yeah.
Which is a good one.
It is a good one. That is a good movie.
Katie wants to lock me up for a week and make me watch Disney movies.
There are some good ones. I liked Moana.
Moana's good.
That was a good one.
It's a
Catchy songs too.
that was Lin-Manuel Miranda who did Hamilton, who wrote all the
okay.
songs for it and composed it. And
Oh, I
stuff.
haven't seen Hamilton yet.
Really?
No.
I recommend it. It's very, very good.
Okay.
Yeah. That was
That
what
would be
Pippa Sue
fun.
was in.
That I know.
Yes.
I mean, I know that she was in Hamilton, and I know that you guys went to Hamilton. You shared
Right.
with me a little bit about it, but other than that, I know nothing. But
Yeah.
I knew it was highly rated.
It was probably the most popular musical for like 5 years or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, on Broadway. And you knew one of the characters.
I know. So one of my client's daughters was Pippa Sue, the original. See, yeah, because I'm talking. The original
Elizabeth. Eliza
of the wife of.
of Hamilton. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh.
so she was like a lead. And Mary's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, Pippa Sue's in that one play Hamilton? I was like, Mary.
Play.
One play.
I was like,
I think
that
she's,
is the biggest play in the world right now. And she had no idea. She was just
and
like...
she's like out on, and then I look her up and I'm like, oh my God, she's like really like a star.
She's a big deal. Yeah.
She famous.
You know,
She's famous.
Famous, huh?
And she, her dad came here. And
Oh, cool.
so her mom a little bit, but that's, I mean, that's as close as I get to being near fame.
Yeah, that's interesting too. That I've always wanted to like know famous people or be around famous people growing up, and then, you know, how many times have we encountered famous people without ever realizing it? And
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
I know that if I saw one, I'd be like, oh, you kind of look like so-and-so. Like, I wouldn't actually think that it was them.
Unless they're really big.
And I
Yeah.
am particularly bad at that too, at recognizing famous people, because I don't watch TV anymore either, or broadcast TV. I just watch stuff that's pre-recorded
Good
without
for
any
you.
commercials.
Oh my God, good for you. Yeah.
And I love The Office.
Great choice.
You guys have a lot in common between your tonsils.
I mean, it's most
and-
millennial people.
Generational thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's most millennials in the world, like The Office.
In the
With our
world.
tonsils in the... Delayed reaction, I'm sorry. We have so much in common. We have tonsil problems and like The Office.
It's a meme.
Yeah.
A meme.
Hashtag millennials. Oh.
Hashtag.
Okay.
I didn't understand at all what a hashtag was for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, goodness.
Then I finally learned, and I'm like, oh, I was saying it pound.
So you were saying pound me too?
Yeah.
Did you get in trouble for that?
Pound me too.
Pound me too. That doesn't make sense. It
That
doesn't
really
seem
makes a
appropriate.
whole entirely different connotation. Oh, man. Oh.
Laughter is really good for the immune system.
It
Sure
is.
is, and I think they have legitimate studies on that too. Of the chemicals released, they counteract a lot of stress hormones and other things like that, and
I
it
love
just
it.
feels good too. You know, after you've laughed, you're like, I didn't do anything bad right there.
Exactly.
I feel better than before.
Yeah, you definitely.
And you don't get what you get with addiction curves, where you laugh and you're like, oh, I'm not laughing anymore. This sucks. I need to laugh more.
But you don't really need to. But unless you're us, and you do.
Sucks, I need to laugh more.
And if you can't, it just gets so much worse.
That's interesting, though. You're right about that. You don't. I mean, it's fun to laugh again, but you don't really need to keep the benefit of that
No,
previous
less.
laugh.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
learning a bit about addiction psychology and stuff like that. It was really interesting how like some stuff will spike your dopamine or serotonin so quickly, but natural things that do that have this natural counterbalance mechanism, that diminishing return type thing. So instead of spiking and then going straight down again where you would hit withdrawal essentially, it meters it or buffers it somehow.
Yeah.
And it's really complex, but it's really kind of elegant and beautiful that like the natural things
See, there we are again.
do the diminishing returns instead of a spike.
They let you down gently.
Mm-hmm. As it's supposed to, like like things you're supposed to do, or like laughing. But
Yeah.
then you can get the artificial spikes where you take a drug like cocaine, you're like spike, but then you also fall
Yeah.
really quickly, and there's nothing to catch you in.
'Cause
So
it's not natural.
Kind of awful. I've heard. I've actually never done cocaine, but I took Adderall for a long time, which is basically the same thing.
It's not, yeah, I've heard it's not far off.
Yeah.
What did you take for, what's Adderall?
It's for ADD.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's a super stimulant.
It's an ephedrine
Drug.
type
Yeah.
class, amphetamine.
what did you take during college?
Ritalin, which is kind of like Adderall, but I think just a different brand.
Yeah, I think it is a brand
Honestly,
difference.
yeah.
Okay.
So the same thing. I didn't like it personally.
Oh man, it allowed me to focus, but it also sometimes threw my brain into overthoughts, which was really easy to get into on the Adderall. Where I
Wow.
just
It
think,
hurt
think,
my
think, think.
chest.
Ooh, yeah, then you shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I like kind of was. It was like I can manage without it, you know.
And it definitely disrupts sleep, especially if you take it any time after noon. I think because
and it messes up your appetite and.
Oh yeah, I remember
all sorts of stuff.
Some people would take it specifically for that to not eat. I was like, that's not healthy.
Remember when I stopped taking it? So I took it for a few months, and then I came to visit her, and I forgot to take it that day. And we went out to Wildberry down the street, and I had no bottom to my stomach. I had a full omelet that was, you know, this big, probably like almost a foot long or something.
Yeah, they're huge.
What else did I have? I had the rest of your
Pancakes.
salad. I had pancakes. I think I had a
2
chocolate
orange
milk.
juices, a chocolate milk, or a smoothie,
A smoothie, yeah.
and
Hash
hash browns,
browns,
and
and
then
then
the
something
rest
for
of my
dessert.
salad and my roll,
And your roll.
and then some
I
kind
could have
of
kept going.
like some kind of crepe, you know.
I do that with
Yeah.
tamales and tacos. It's just endless. I don't understand why, but they're so good, and I can't stop eating. And I just don't get full. It's almost like
I mean,
She got full.
I put it away.
I didn't, but then I went to my grandparents' house, who were still alive at that time, and I was supposed to visit with them, and I was like, can I just lay down? Because I was so
when
tired.
You're that full.
And I was so tired because I wasn't on a stimulant, you know,
Oh,
anymore.
that too, yeah.
So the combination, I was like, I need to lay down, and then I ended up not even talking with them the entire time I was there.
And digestion takes a lot of energy too. It actually redirects a lot of blood to your digestive system,
No,
and so you
yeah, I
get
believe
those
it.
sort of like loopiness or lethargy or
Big time.
cold. I'll get cold often after I eat because it pulls from your extremities to your stomach for digestion.
Interesting. Okay.
And so oftentimes after I eat, I'll get cold, but then about 5 to 10 minutes after that cold spell, I get warm again because it's my body's metabolizing and burning and digesting.
And now you're
And so
heating
it's
up. Yeah.
releasing the energy
Yeah.
back.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, when I learned that, I'm like, that's so cool. And it happens very consistently. Like if I'm cool to begin with and I eat something, I'll get colder
And then
until the energy from that food starts releasing itself. And
wow.
yeah, and certain
Okay.
foods, take a lot more energy to digest, like the high fiber and stuff. And fiber
Cheeses.
is, yeah,
Iceberg lettuce.
iceberg lettuce.
Taco Bell in general.
Yeah, that takes a few days.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
I think we
everybody.
can wrap it up,
Thank
yeah.
you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Jeff, for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you.
Anytime.
This has been a really great couple of episodes. I think
Actually,
we
it's
both
been
learned.
guys.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I could see doing a lot more talking.
Sure.
Well, we
yeah.
got our on location thing next.
Mhm.
Yes.
you guys
Telling
can
no
come out
more
and visit.
secrets on location.
It's kind of cool. Got a nice ring to it. Yeah. Bring a couple of the cameras and stuff. Be
We
good.
got to bring the crew.
Yeah. All of our sound equipment, like, hiking along in our backpack or
Booming
something.
it.
Yeah. No, that would be great.
We'll do that.
But yes,
Sure.
thank you for coming on, and we'll be talking soon about the on-location stuff. And thank you all for listening / watching. And we
Slash
will
laughing.
/ laughing if you thought we were funny, which obviously you did,
You ain't
right?
seen nothing yet.
Okay, we got to end. We got to end this way.
Oh, they're very natural. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Oh.